Welcome to the live recording of my podcast, Leadership English. Let me know if you have any questions throughout the recording, and at the end, I'll stick around for some Q&A. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you add in the comments later on if you're watching the rebroadcast, where you're from, what industry you're in, and any topics that you would like me to make future podcast episodes about. All right, as we begin everything, you're going to shake it off. 3, 2, 1. I'm showing you my process and the process that I coach. So you can go into any public speaking situation with calm confidence. Make sure that when you do drink something, I recommend warm water, preferably warm water with lemon or decaf coffee or decaf tea, because what that does is it allows you to take a small sip, but it'll help move the saliva around a little bit faster so that you can speak more smoothly and feel better. All right, let's get started. In this episode of Leadership English, we're going to talk about how where you're from impacts how you communicate and how to modify so that you can communicate more effectively with American corporations. My name is Tanya Suarez, and as a leadership coach, I work with professionals who are non native speakers and teach them how to communicate clearly and confidently. Make sure that if you haven't already, go to tanyasuarez.com/lead to download a free audio training about the 3 essentials of American leadership communication. Now, what we're going to work on today is actually a sneak peek into something that I coach in my leadership communication program. It's really important as a non native speaker to understand why you do things so that you can fix them faster. In a more traditional setting where it's not catered to non native speakers, you might learn to speak clearly, get to the point, and communicate concisely. That's great. Or there's a different layer that you experience as a non native speaker that your culture impacts the way that you process information and the way you communicate. And you might not realize that that's impacting your business communication in English. So I find that this research and awareness really helps you get better results faster. All right, let's take a look. So basically, it starts off with first, you want to analyze, do you come from a culture that is low context or high context? And it can really be simply boiled down to a triangle. And this is something that really helps you understand how we value information. So, if you're from a low context culture, these tend to be more individualistic societies. This is how Americans communicate. So, if you're in a multinational or international corporation and you're working mostly with Americans, and American English does tend to be the default communication for business, this is what you're going to strive for. This is a more direct way of communicating. Basically, as you see at the point of the triangle, you're going to literally get to the point first and then offer explanations, details, and context. These cultures also tend to be more task oriented. Now, there are a lot of fascinating studies and information that I recommend learning more about in terms of individualistic versus collectivistic societies, because that will help you understand not only your communication, but how, as a leader, how to communicate more effectively with your teams. You'll notice that I write a lot of articles about this because wherever you're from and how you modify your communication style, it's also going to be, I recommend, to tailor it, take the time to understand where your team is from. Because yes, American English is the default business communication, but if you have an entire team based in South America, there are certain things you can understand about their cultural communication that will help you lead them better. So a little research goes a long way. Now, you might be from a high context society. So this tends to be more collectivistic. The communication style is more indirect. So if you notice, it's the inverted triangle. So if you're from a high context culture, then you're going to probably start off with more details. I like to think of it as high context takes me through a journey before it gets to the destination. Whereas low context, you start off with the destination and then you work your way back if you need to. Now, high context cultures also tend to be more relationship oriented. So that kind of informs how the value system is really important, not only to how you communicate, but how you motivate. So again, this is multi-layered information. Right now, we're really focusing on who you are and how that impacts you. But as a leader, everything you learn is an opportunity to lead better. Now, in order to see where you fall on the spectrum, so higher context cultures tend to be, for example, Latin America, Southern Europe, Asian cultures, African cultures, whereas low context, more direct cultures would be the US, we've got Canada, the Nordic countries, Northern Europe, Eastern Europe. So now that you can take a moment and see where you fall culturally on the spectrum, there are different approaches for both. So, for example, if you're from a higher context culture, you're going to really need to work on getting to the point, answering first, explaining second. Again, write that down if you need to. Answer first, explain second. When I work with clients from these cultures, it takes a lot. You can intellectually accept this, but it takes a lot of practice in order to do this naturally. So, obviously, our goal is to be able to do this in a business context, but I want you to train this in your everyday English experience. And a simple way that you can incorporate this practice is, for example, just talk about the a movie that you saw recently or a TV show. So just out loud, tell me what was the show about? Get the main point and then give me a little bit of detail. And you can do this for yourself. Then you can check it by reading the description of the episode. Usually, the description, if you're watching on Netflix, it's like 1 to 3 sentences. So, this is a way that you can start training your brain like, okay, how do you process information? What do you prioritize communicating? And then playing around with it until you feel that it really fits that triangle, more direct model better. Now, if you're from a lower context culture, what I find with my clients who are either from Russia or Germany or the Nordic countries is you've got the direct part, like you get to the point. But as you sit there further along in the spectrum than the US, what I find is that you probably communicate too bluntly. There's a difference between being direct and diplomatic and being blunt, which can be perceived as aggressive or rude. So, what you're going to want to work on is okay, I can get to the point, but how can I communicate this smoothly, more diplomatically? As you know, Americans, we tend to be, to some, perhaps obnoxiously positive. We smile a lot, we say awesome and great about everything. So, that's really difficult for a context that's lower context culture. Smile, relax. Even if you don't feel comfortable smiling, that's okay, don't. But you do want to relax those facial muscles, and that's going to help your message be perceived in a way that's more effective when working with Americans. And something that I do in my program is I have my clients very simply write a triangle, draw a triangle on a post-it note and put it next to your computer or wherever you tend to have your meetings. This is a tiny reminder that allows you to see it all the time and gets you refocused of whenever you're answering or you're in, especially with virtual meetings, this is incredibly helpful. If you're in in-person meetings, put it in your on your paper, on your notebook, and it reminds you start with the point. Start with the answer. If you're from the culture that already is quite direct, maybe you want to put a smiley face at the top. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to smile, but that's a quick reminder of be more diplomatic. So these are ways that understanding how where you're from impacts your communication style will allow you to really understand, oh, this is why I'm not connecting with people, or this is why there's some confusion. As a non native speaker, I find that the first instinct for my clients is people must be confused because my English isn't good enough. When you think that's the problem, your solution is going to be learn more English, learn more vocabulary, improve grammar. But by the time you work for a multinational company, by the time you're an executive and you're in the C suite level, I promise you the level of English that you have is good enough. It's not about getting more English, it's about communicating better, understanding the strategy. American communication, grammatically speaking, is quite simple. So getting fancier English is not going to help you. This is what I really want for you. This is what's going to help you be a better leader. It's going to help you feel more confident. It's going to increase your executive presence. So having that moment of analysis of, okay, I'm from this culture. Oh, I can see now how that's how I communicate. There's so many other things that contribute to that. For example, I work with Brazilian clients a lot. And something about that culture, which is also true of Hispanic culture, is that everyone kind of talks at the same time and you interrupt each other. And when you have something to say, you just say it. And that can be a jarring difference, a cultural shock when they move into US business and US or American friendships. And they realize that, oh, speaking up out of turn is not, it's seen kind of rude. Everyone takes their turn and we all use these little phrases to kind of take the mic, if you will. And that can feel overly formal. It can feel maybe a little bit boring. And so it's important to understand like, okay, how can I accept this as being the norm? How can I be myself in this context while also respecting their cultural communication habits? So, this is great for you to know of yourself. It'll help you identify why you're doing certain things. It'll help you see that, oh, it wasn't my sentence structure. It was the fact that I was giving this huge long explanation and they just needed the three-word answer. So, it wasn't that you don't have enough English, it's that you had too much English. If you gave that three-word answer, but again, the reactions just didn't fit what you thought you were gonna get, then you might realize, "Oh, I probably said that too aggressively for them." Like, it might feel normal for you, but they perceived it as aggressive. Like, "Okay, these are things that you can now modify to connect and communicate more effectively." Because at the end of the day, it's not about changing who you are. I want you to be your most authentic self in any situation and in any language. But it's about understanding how cultural and situational awareness will allow you to connect authentically and respectfully. And again, as a leader, you have a lot of people working under you. You have a lot of people that you're selling to, that you're working with, whether it's providers or clients, customers, employees. So when you understand that this is a factor, not only can you modify your own language to communicate more effectively with Americans or in the general context, but also keep in mind that if you have an entire section, an entire company or client that you're working with, an entire team that you have based in a different country, and you realize, oh, this is why maybe we're not clicking. Or, oh, because they're from a collectivistic culture, I was trying to motivate their individual achievements, but they would rather something that highlights the team. And then you find ways to motivate and make sure that your team performs optimally in a way that is more effective, and it also makes them feel seen and valued. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of Leadership English. Make sure that you go to tanyasuarez.com. I have tons of great resources there. I have a blog with business English articles, with business English videos, things that will help you develop your language in a way that is a lot more efficient because efficiency is the name of the game. And make sure if you're interested in joining my leadership communication program, doors open in September. So make sure that you sign up early. Limited spots are available. This is really great if you are in a leadership position or will soon be in a leadership position. And you want to make sure that your skills are strong, that your executive presence is accurate and authentic to your personality, and that you're able to communicate in different settings effectively. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next week. All right. So that was the live recording. Let me check out some of the comments. Oh, wonderful. Okay, I'm so glad. Let me go ahead and put this up. So you're saying that you are embracing a new way of learning English? Yes, thinking outside the box. That is fantastic. Because what happens is when you're in student mode, a lot of times you get used to learning in a certain way. And it's really hard when you get into the real world, when you get into more practical application of language, which is really communication, to let go of that and to find ways to be yourself. And I promise you, I don't want you to, for all the perfectionists out there, you will make mistakes. You will have moments of awkwardness. It's okay. They're going to happen. Those are going to be the funny stories that you tell. I was just telling a client the other day, she's expanding her business into the American market. Into a little bit of nerves in terms of interacting with Americans and making that big move. And I was trying to console her and just telling her, like, look, it's going to be awkward, but those awkward moments, because she's already had some, can be the funniest stories to tell. Those are gonna be the stories that are gonna be conversation starters. Those are gonna be the memories that you're gonna look back on and think like, "Oh, I'm so glad it's different now." So sometimes embracing imperfections or mistakes in a way that is lighthearted, in a way that you think, "Okay, this doesn't have to crush me. It'll just be something that adds to my story," can be a really healthy perspective. It decreases anxiety, it increases appreciation, and again, it increases connection because those are going to be the tales that you tell over and over again. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.